Welcome to Buckets, brought to you by BetMGM, the king of sportsbooks. My name's Matt Moore. I'm the senior NBA writer for the Action Network, joined, as I am every Sunday night for our Monday episode, by Jim Turvey and Joe Dellera. You know him as the Future Jays. On today's show, we'll go over best bets for Monday, March 18th in the association. We'll get you best bets on the slate, including some sides, some props, and some totals. And we'll talk about a number of things on the future slate today, including a fascinating discussion about which of the two Western Conference potential sleeper teams would you rather have, the Dallas Mavericks or the New Orleans Pelicans? We'll also hit on the New York Knicks because I am somehow contractually obligated to do this every fucking week with the 700 Knicks fans I have working with me. And we'll talk about the Western Conference play-in tournament, all that and more on today's show. As a reminder, everything we talk about can be found in the award-winning Action Network app. Best way for you to track your picks. If you're listening in North Carolina and you're picking up the stuff because you're new to the show, hey, welcome aboard. Welcome to the land of online legal sports betting. And you should download the Action Network app because it's the best way for you to track your picks. You get all sorts of cool information. You can track Jim's picks and Joe's picks and my picks, all sorts of future plays. Check them out as I finally, of course, what did I bet this week? What did you bet? Finally gave in the ghost and bet the Denver Nuggets because I was like, I just don't think I'm going to get a better number. They just keep winning, and so they lost. We'll talk about that a little bit later on. Also, as a reminder, check out youtube.com/The Action Network. You can find all sorts of cool stuff on there, our live shows. We are scheming for a live show during the NBA playoffs that's going to be going on before tip of one of the nights during the week. We're going to do like a whole bunch of cool stuff, a whole bunch of very cool breakdowns. Be on the lookout for that. Also, you can catch live buckets on Monday nights and Thursday nights at 11 Eastern. So make sure to check that out. Live buckets. Come hang out. If you've got bets for the Tuesday or Friday slates, come on by and leave them in the chat. We will break them down live on air for you. Like, we will do that for you. We will give you our handicap on those games, our thoughts, our leans on those games. Bring them by. Join us on Live Buckets Mondays and Thursdays, 11 Eastern. Turn on notifications over at youtube.com/The Action Network. All right, let's get to it. Jim Turvey, Joe Dellera, let's get some bets for Monday cooking in the association. I never go first. So you know what? I'm going to go first because I drove 13 hours. If you're watching this on our YouTube version, I'm in my parents' basement. So as a reward for myself, I'm going to go first. And I'm just going to keep betting unders. That's what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep betting unders. Under 224.5, Cavs, Pacers. Under 213.5, Heat, Sixers. Under 213, Knicks, Warriors. I fear no man. I fear no over. Let's go under all the way. Jim, what is your best bet or bets for Monday, March 18th?
Yeah, I've got the Knicks on the spread, a little sprinkle on the money line as well. And then I've got one of the grimiest player props I've ever given out on this podcast. I've got Dante DiVincenzo under 7.5 rebounds plus assists.
Sure, just a normal DDV under rebounds and assists mark, 7.5 versus the Warriors. Joe Dellera, what are your best bets for Monday?
I'm also on the Knicks. I like the Knicks.
Oh my gosh, I can't believe it. All right, go on.
Surprise. But then I also like Domantas Sabonis over 13.5 rebounds against the Memphis Grizzlies.
All right. So a lot of Knicks here. Let's go ahead and start there. We'll get the 3 picks on the Knicks in this spot. Knicks starting to look like themselves again. Got a big win versus the Kings the other night. Jalen Brunson was absolutely fantastic. Unsurprisingly, Tibbs is doing real well with this situation, with there not being fouls called. That Kings game, I had a friend of Jared Dubin, who's done a lot of work at a number of places, runs a really great Substack, was like, it was in one of the Slacks that I'm in, being like, I just think this is maybe going a little bit too far. Like, you can't not be calling obvious fouls, to which I responded, yes, you can. And then I responded with, if they die, they die. So, like, I'm loving this. They could let him foul. I prefer this. Call me demented. I prefer this. But Jim, Joe's always chomping at the bit to give me the Knicks cap. You give me the Knicks cap now. Why do you like the New York Knicks here on Monday night?
I do indeed. Yeah, they found their groove. As you point out, they kind of got their groove back here. Obviously, the main storyline it fits. You know, it probably overfits to a degree at this point, but it certainly fits. OG Anunoby's back. What do? They win 3 straight by notable margins of victory. He's a plus from the plus minus perspective. He's a plus in all 3 games. He's now all 17 games as a Knick. He's a plus. It isn't that easy. It isn't that obvious. But he is a huge factor, and he'll be a great weapon to have against a Warriors team that's, the top end scoring talent is what you want to be locked in on. So I really like the matchup for them. But I also this to me is kind of a crazy number, and it opened at Knicks +4, and it's already up to 4.5. So I'm a little bit interested to see which this way this number goes. I personally have this around to pick them, so I have a lot of wiggle room. The Knicks, to circle back to OG Anunoby really quick, they were 8-10 when he was out, instantly 3-0 with him. Those wins: Philly by 27, Portland by 12, Sacramento by 7. That was a tighter game than it appeared. But to kind of talk about your underlook as well, I mean, the defensive rating since he returned, 95.1. We're talking very small sample here, of course, but it passes the eye test of them just being made for this sort of a gladiatorial ring of an NBA that we're seeing right now. And having OG and his physical presence there is just perfect. On the flip side of it, the Warriors, they got a big win over the weekend, but the last 2 weeks, if we extend the window a little bit, they're 28th in spread differential. This is also one of those fake home games. The Warriors just got done a 3-game road trip. It was on the West Coast at least, so it's not like they had to travel back. Rest differentials even for the game, but I tend to underbake the home court a tiny bit if it's one of those, we're on a road trip coming back for the first game home. So there's plenty of room for me on this one. I'm going to take the spread. I'm going to sprinkle the money line. That's what I did for Knicks Kings. That worked out pretty well. They're a little bit further into their road trip now. They've maybe had a rest day in the Bay Area, but I think overall this Knicks team is a really good fit for the league as a whole, as they're calling things right now, and a good matchup for this Warriors game. So I'm going to be playing them spread and money line on Monday.
All right, Joe, why do you like the Knicks in this spot?
Yeah, I mean, the Warriors are also just not very good against the spread at home. They're 10-17 on the season against the spread as a home favorite. So it's just kind of that whole thing like, oh, you're buying in to Golden State. You're paying that little bit of a premium, even against the Knicks. I think the other thing is, too, when we look at this post All-Star break, a lot of our conversations, even on this podcast, we've talked about how like the Warriors are improving. They're looking better, et cetera, et cetera. They're 8-5. They have a net rating of plus 1.8 since the All-Star break. New York Knicks 7-5 plus 2.8. And that's with all the injuries that they've been dealing with, missing Jalen Brunson multiple games, OG Anunoby, obviously Julius Randle as well. You get OG Anunoby back, and it's literally just an absolute monster physicality like ad for them to have. I mean, I was watching the game at this time, it'll be 2 nights ago when they played the Kings, and there was a point where like Isaiah Hartenstein literally like just tackled Domantas Sabonis, and it's just like, and that was loud. It happened. It was fine. But when you're the New York Knicks and like if you can get a little bit more wiggle room to play physically, oh man, like that is a huge advantage if you're the Knicks, just based on the style of play that they want to go for. So I really do think that this is a big test, like physically, for Golden State. And the other thing is, honestly, the Knicks, I think, match up pretty well personnel-wise with the Warriors. The Warriors have been generally wanting to play a little bit smaller. Hartenstein, not like the most nimble big, but he's still capable of playing that 5, even like against some stretch guys, especially because Draymond Green is not really going to shoot a lot of threes. Like he always seems to get them up on national TV, but he's not like somebody that's stretching the floor at the 5. So I do think the Knicks have a lot of different options that they can throw at the Warriors. And when you have a guy like Jalen Brunson, I don't know who's really stopping him. So I do think this is a great opportunity for New York. And I like the 4.5. I just think the number is, I just can't wrap my head around the number right now. I think that this, like Jim said, it should probably be closer to a pick 'em based on not only recency, but with OG Anunoby back, but especially full season numbers.
The Saturday night game I thought was really indicative of who the Warriors are. And it's like, well, Matt, they won. Well, yes, they won versus the 10 seed in which Anthony Davis got hurt. Like, they are 7-20 straight up with a -3 spread differential when they face top 10 point differential teams this season. Like, a big reason why the Warriors are having to fight for a play-in spot is because their schedule has been absolutely brutal, and they've had to play all of these really great teams. Funny story, though, they also haven't beaten any of them. They haven't beaten anybody. Like, they don't. This is what's been driving me crazy about this narrative discussion of like the red hot Warriors. I'm like, look at the schedule. Like, you're gonna need to find me I try and contain this because I can go too far where I'm like, no, you got to beat the bad teams or you're inconsistent. Oh no, you got to beat the good teams or you're not serious. So then I'm basically like, you have to beat everyone, otherwise I don't take you seriously. Unless you're the Boston Celtics, in which case I still don't take you seriously because your clutch time offense isn't good enough. So like, yeah, there's like a bar where this gets too high. But the what I'm actually kind of looking for, if you're really, win profile is very big to me, and win profile essentially, for when you face the elite teams, you want to go like slightly under 500. You're not going to win most of them because those are very good teams and those are hard. Like those are often coin flips. If you do win a lot of those games, you're one of the elite squads. Like you are Boston. You are one of these other squads that's really good versus those teams. But the Warriors are not just like not good. They are bad versus the good teams. And the Knicks profile, I love these spots because like the Knicks with OG profile is like a very, very good team. I still would very much just like any word on Mitchell Robinson. If he's not going to play, I would like just like hey, it's not going to happen this year. Like, it's not going to happen this year. Like, have I missed anything, Joe? Have I missed anything in the Knicks? Like, it's the Knicks, so they're never going to say anything.
Yeah, the most recent report was on Thursday, and they said that he began running and jumping, which for Mitchell Robinson, like realistically, like his skill set, that is what he does. Like he runs and he jumps. He's not a scorer, so like this is a good thing. But it's still just like I don't know what that means because it's like Randall they talked about in the same conversation, and they said controlled contact situations. So to me, that's different than what like Robinson is doing.
It's been very funny that like everyone's like, when's Julius Randle? But if they can get Julius Randle back, and meanwhile I'm like, forget Julius Randle. I need Mitchell Robinson. Like if you told me right now that Julius Randle was not going to come back and Mitchell Robinson was back tomorrow, I would be like, let me bet some Knicks futures now. I'm ready. I'm in. All that's to say, I like this. I will tail the two of you. I'm sorry in advance, but I'm going to go ahead and tail you on the Knicks -4. I'm also going to take the under 213 here. So one of the many things that I looked at, and there's a little bit of overfitting and confirmation bias here, where one of the things I'm trying very hard to do is you can take pretty much any split of teams since the All-Star break and be like, teams that have an A in their name, but not an L. And you can, look, it's 70% to the under. That's amazing because everybody is basically 70% to the under except like the Wolves and the Hawks. However, one of the things I really have tried to do is I've tried to get above the 75% mark. That's what I'm really kind of aiming for because we are seeing totals dip so low that the over is ticking back up and like, okay, unders are only hitting at like 65% versus for a while there when it was, 80 and then 70. But one thing I did kind of look at was I looked at top 15 defenses with a bottom 10 free throw rate allowed. So like, what is this? How does this project out? What's the logic here? If you are already not fouling, you're already a disciplined defense, and you get more leeway. I was curious about those teams. And those have gone 55 and 21 to the under since February 9th, which, by the way, is when I've noticed that total started crashing, was that day specifically, February 9th. And those are hitting at 72.4%, which is well above the 65% mark that the overall totals are at since that date. On the under. So, now, this total is low, right? The Knicks in particular have been a wagon on the unders. Like they've been even better than the rest of them. The only games that they've gone over in that time span are the Atlanta Hawks. It's the Hawks.
Yeah, fair.
And the Orlando Magic with a total of 210, which this is 213, that's 210. This may be too low. Like I am just telling you straight up right now, listener, that I am actively at this point going like, you're going to have to prove it to me with some of these foul rate teams. Like you're going to have to go over and teach me a lesson because I'm just going to keep betting them no matter what the number is. And I'm going to see what the threshold is where it's like, okay, maybe that's too low. 213 is not low enough for me. I think that the Knicks will wind up containing things because here's a massive one for you. This is via my friend Seth Partnow, who does work for The Athletic, amongst other places, including Dunked On. The number one player in free throw drop since they started changing the rules is Steph Curry.
That's surprising.
Interesting.
Free throws drawn. And if you want to know a big reason why, they are allowing – everyone's focused on on-ball contact. They are allowing you to grab way more off-ball, which means guess what? All of the stuff that frees Steph up, all of that movement, if you're able to grab and pull and yank on him, that slows him down.
That's
Now,
interesting.
I don't want to bet the under on Steph because I'm not an idiot, but I do think that that's enough to get me in place for an under here, where I will go ahead and take this specific matchup here and take the under as well. Let's get into some of these sicko props that the two of you have. First, Dante DiVincenzo, rebounds and assists. Jim Turvey, explain yourself, sir.
Yeah, it's that time of the year where we really we go spelunking into some of the darkest and deepest caves that NBA props have to offer. But here's the look. Basically, since OG has returned, it makes sense. If you think of it logically, he is the type of player who will lose both usage and minutes and stats, and that is exactly what's happened. If we look back to the first time OG was on the Knicks and we use that sample set, he's gone under this number in 12 of the 17 games that he and OG have both been in the starting lineup for the Knicks. To me, it's a little bit juiced to the under. We are in the land of, again, this is, I'm looking for anything right now. I'm probably going to do a quarter unit as compared to sometimes where you do the half unit, but I do think there's a lot to like here. Of the 3 games since OG returned, he's much lower on those. Warriors are pretty much average in terms, they don't allow a ton of rebounds, a ton of assists. His points scare me a little bit more because he is still getting up an insane amount of threes. And with points, rebounds, and assists, the points are always the most weighted because they're the most prevalent of the 3. So if he has the ability to go high with that, I want to just cut that out entirely. I don't hate an under on a PRA. The first game OG came back, played his points under and that hit. But overall, I like the rebounds and assists portion of this more. He's losing out on those. If you look at his potential rebounds, potential assists as well, his minutes have also dropped a little bit. So, again, it's not the prettiest pick I'll ever give out here, but sometimes the ugliest picks, money is money. So Dante DiVincenzo under 7.5 rebounds plus assists.
May God have mercy on your soul. Joe, give me your prop play here on Sabonis over 13.5 rebounds for the man that leads the NBA in triple doubles this season.
Yeah, the dude's been absolutely incredible. He just had 14 against the Knicks as well. But the big thing here is when he's played Memphis this season, he's averaging, it's insane. He's had 21 and 26 rebounds. So he's averaging 23.5 boards on 28 chances per game. Just mind-numbing numbers. Both of those games had Jaren Jackson Jr. in them, which it looks like Jaren Jackson Jr. is going to play in this game. Looks like Desmond Bane also should play. So I think we might see a little bit more of a competitive game, despite the spread being set at like 9.5. With that being said, he's gone over this in 8 of his last 10 games, and Memphis continues to be one of the worst rebounding teams in the NBA. So I like Sabonis to go over this. I think that he's going to bring that physicality. When you were listening, I was listening to his post-game comments a bit about how the Knicks really brought the physicality to the game. And I think that that's something, it's like maybe he's a little sore, but at the same time, I think that they're going to want to bounce back and have a big game here and really, kind of assert themselves against the Memphis Grizzlies in a game that they not only should win, but I think kind of need to win, especially for playoff positioning. So I like Sabonis to go over the 13.5 rebounds. There's already a 14.5 in the market too, but I think it'll probably settle around 13.5. I
mean, it's not surprising that Memphis sucks on rebounding considering they don't have any centers, but I am a little bit surprised that JJ, it feels like Tripp's been better at rebounding this season, and yet that those numbers are still so bad. But then again, Sabonis being this great of a rebounder, despite when I look at him, I'm like, oh yeah, he's like a really skilled big, but he's not like a massive hulking dude, and he just bodies everybody. Just bodies absolutely everybody. So good, great pick there. I'm going to take the under in Cavs Pacers and the under in Heat Sixers. Both of these are along similar trends. It's the foul rate thing. So high foul defenses. This is the Pacers, right? So let's take the teams that foul a lot. And if they're getting fewer calls, what does that do for their under rate? That trend is at 66.7%, 42, 21, and 1 since the All-Star break. That's for that one. With the Pacers specifically, it's 9-3 to the under for them since the All-Star break. So the Pacers have been an under team. Also, here's what's weird. There's all this kind of talk about Tyrese Halliburton, who is struggling. He is struggling. Yeah. He hasn't looked. Jalen Cooper had a phenomenal thread on this on Twitter about kind of breaking down what's been different with Hallie's shot. I still see a lot of good things from him. Like someone I saw on the old Twitters was like, "Are we sure he should be all NBA over Fox?" I'm like, yes, I am certain. Tyrese Halliburton's been like one of the 5 most impactful offensive players in the entire league this season, and I wouldn't have him 5. Like this is preposterous. But regardless of that, I also will say this: I do see a lot of promising things actually from the Pacers defense. Like I'm kind of in like I was on a 13-hour drive I had to do. I was pondering kind of the concept a lot of like, man, what if the Pacers might make a little bit of noise? Like I actually like this team. I know that they've lost and been inconsistent. I get that. I am thinking about them more in terms of there's teams across the vast grassland of the regular season where you have all these different challenges that you have to face. And then there's like, let's put them in the box and they got to beat this one team. And what does that look like? And it'll depend on the matchup. I'm not betting Pacers futures, but I am not like out on there are teams right now I will tell you that I'm just like, oh no, I cannot wait to fade that team in the playoffs. The Pacers, I don't think are going to be one of them. So I am actually kind of optimistic on the defense here. All that said, this number is 224.5. That's enough to get me on board the under. Is there a reason I should be super concerned about this, Jim?
No, I think that overall this has been a very notable trend. And again, we always talk about extremes. This is an extreme shift from the league on their approach to calling fouls. And I think the books are taking a little bit of time to adjust. I'm sure that it always evens out in the long run. The books always catch up, but you got to catch while you can. It's gonna be a little bit slow at times. And I really like the look that you found on the higher foul teams being more notable. That makes perfect logical sense. I think these all 3 looks are ones that I'll be joining you on.
Sixers Heat is actually a combination of the two. So the Sixers are a high foul team and a high foul rate team. So they foul a lot and they draw a lot of fouls. Even without Embiid, they've stayed pretty relatively high. The other one I've looked at, and this is the same one as the Knicks, the Heat qualify under this one, which is top 15 defenses with a bottom 10 free throw rate. That one's at 80 or 73%. So I have a number of trends here. It's 213. Again, I'm not like you mentioned, like, well, aren't the books going to adjust? I really don't know. Like, I don't know what that number should be. Like, I don't know how low this number honestly should be at this point with where these games are getting to. To me, it's so low that it is pretty ridiculous here. So I'm willing to go ahead and take the under on this one, even at 213. Again, this may be the night that I just like get cracked on unders and have to go back and be like, yeah, okay, the fun is over, it's done. I will add this though, that the Heat are since February 9th, which is again when I started noticing this trend going downward when I did the numbers. Miami's 12-3 to the under. That's great. But here's the other one. They are -8 under the over-under number. They're 8 under the total. -7.9 is how far they're under. The average combined total in the actual combined score is 113.2. It's at this number, and I'm getting the Sixers, who obviously struggle versus good defenses right now without Embiid. So,
hey, Matt, can I hop in real quick, one more second, just to add on to what you're saying? So I think there may be listeners out there who, they're not like trends players, and they might like bristle a little bit at this kind of discussion of like, it feels like this is, if this burns me, it'll burn me. But I think that the opposite side of that is like someone who has a perfectly synced model, right? But this is the time where they are playing around too. And even if you do have a model out there, you're weighing how much of this small sample you want to put in versus how much the regular season has to weigh. So I don't think there's anyone out there right now who has a perfect feel and a perfect model that is attuned brilliantly. I think this is a time to rely a little bit on this trend that is recent, and we're trying to figure out small sample versus what's noise versus real. And there is space for all of that type of approaches right now.
So, I mean, I think it's a great question. I think you bring up, Jim. Like one of the things that I'm trying to do, like I had planned to do this even before this huge shift in officiating had ushered in this very different type of play style. I had pretty much decided I was going to be a pretty heavy trends better after All-Star. And one of the reasons is just like, look, you can have your models. It's great. What's your model going to do when Giannis is out? What's Jamal going to do when they're on a 5-7 in March? What's Jamal going to do when 5 guys are out and there's an entirely different starting 5? I think the further we get away from what I would consider to be the realist basketball, which is honestly like late December, early January in the NBA, the further you get away from that, the harder it is, I think, for these models to have reliability. And so I'd rather play the trends. Like, I feel more comfortable playing those trends, and we just happen to be in a time where I want to keep going back to the well on these things. So many people in our space will talk about, like, you don't want to be a blinds trend better. Absolutely. Right. I'm not sitting here going like the Knicks have gone under, like the Heat are 9-2 to the under. So I'm playing the Heat under every single game. What I am doing is I'm taking a very specific, okay, wire the games down.
Yeah, exactly.
Free throws. Let's use that to get a more developed trend cap that we can kind of apply. And I'm probably going to look at pace too. That's the next thing I need to do is, like, pace has become is way down. And I'm trying to understand which teams that's affecting more than others. And honestly, that's really tied to free throw rate too, because that's impacting a lot of it from a number of reasons, including, hey, do you know what happens when a guy shoots a free throw? Everybody gets to rest for a second. And that's, I think, is messing with some of the pace stuff too.
Trends on their own aren't evil if you have great logical scaffolding to it. Like Brandon Anderson is more trends than model, and you'd be hard pressed to find a better than Brandon. Like if you have the logical scaffolding to trends to separate, that's literally you're separating the signal from the noise, and you can be incredibly successful that way.
Yep. All right. So to recap, Jim likes Dante DiVincenzo under 7.5 rebounds and assists like a true psycho. Joe likes Sabonis over 13.5 rebounds. They both like the Knicks minus 4.5. I will tail
plus
them
4.5. We're even getting
plus 4.5. Getting the 4.5 versus the Warriors. I like the under 213 Knicks Warriors. I like the under 213.5 Sixers Heat, and I like the under 224.5 in Cavs and Pacers. Let's talk a little bit about the Western Conference, because I think this is fascinating. On Sunday, Dallas Mavericks get a huge win versus the Denver Nuggets at home. They were up. They trailed for most of the first. They got to a good lead, and then Denver came back and did what they did and got a lead going into the half. It was narrow. The Mavs hung around long enough to get a lead. Jamal Murray and Jokic went to work late. And then that eventually wound up with Jamal Murray had a wide open look for what would have been the game-winning bucket, or no, a bucket to go ahead by 2. Can't get it to go down. Leaves enough time on the clock, and Kyrie Irving hits a running out of like a ATO left-hand skyhook at the buzzer for the win. This is a fascinating game because there's a lot to kind of like dissect from it really is proof that you shouldn't take regular season results as indicative, but there are matchup stuff that's really fascinating. And the reason I say that is not necessarily like, well, you should just throw out the result because the Mavs won. No, but my point is the Nuggets hit more threes than Dallas. That's not going to happen very often. Dallas is going to hit more threes than Denver a lot. So that's really promising for them. Nikola Jokic and Jamal Murray struggled for 3/4 of that game. That's unlikely to happen. The Mavs were dominant, rebounding, killed them on the glass. And Denver, while their numbers have been down this year, have historically been a very good rebounding team. So there's like all these kind of messes, but it guys makes you wonder about a number of things. But more importantly, though, here really is like a thing that I had a lot of time on this drive to think about was, which Western Conference sleeper do you want? Everyone's very preoccupied with Warriors Lakers. They're just like, the Warriors, like, watch out for the Warriors, or, oh, the Lakers, look what they did last year. That's the 9-10. And like, I'm not saying they can't make a run. They can. But if we really want to be serious, we should be probably looking at teams that are closer to being, what's the word? Good. And so if we're going to do that, we need to take a look at 2 other teams. And that's where I think that the path gets very interesting. And we start there, I think, with this question, which I think this is where I kind of got to. The Suns are their own thing, and you can buy into the Suns if you want to. But between these 2 teams, which I think are very, very, very underrated in terms of like conversation, the New Orleans Pelicans, who are currently 5th and are almost definitely going to be in the 4-5, and the Dallas Mavericks, who are currently 7th, and they are a game. They are tied with the Sacramento Kings, technically, but they are a game behind in the loss column, which is what I care about for the 6th seed. Between those 2, Which do you think has a better chance of being the team that surprises us, winds up in the second round with a chance to potentially make the conference finals and give us a really good hedge opportunity with a futures bet at the numbers that we've got in the market? I have a lot of thoughts on this from a how the bracket shakes out perspective. But Jim, I'd love to get your thoughts on between the Mavericks and Pelicans. Which one do you kind of buy more as being a potential sleeper in the Western Conference?
Yeah, I think you said the magical word there, and it really is path. And path has led me to being kind of low on the Mavericks to suddenly being a little interested, and weirdly enough, not because of them. I mean, partially because of them. I think they're playing decent right now, but I'm starting to come around on the idea that Denver isn't going to take the foot off the gas, and that they do want this one seed, and that what the players are telling us is true, and that they are really going to go for this one seed. And I'm very interested if Dallas, I think, is the most likely to get that 6 seed. The Suns still have, I think, the second toughest now remaining schedule. The Kings, I have always been just not quite high enough on them. So if the Mavs settle into that 6 seed, it really potentially could open up very nicely for them. You'd have the Wolves likely in third with either, missing their best offensive big or working him back. And, Cat, I do think he's very important to them in general, but he also has deep issues when it comes to the playoffs. And I would not really want him, being the key player in a playoff series. So that first round matchup looks, potentially very nice. Second round. Now, the biggest thing I think for this Dallas bet is seeing if OKC or Denver is in that 1 seed, because Dallas versus Denver, anything can happen. Playoff Luka is great. I still am of the mind that Denver in the long term is the place I want to be. And the longer you can avoid them, I think is exponentially valuable. So if OKC slips to that second spot, I think there is a ton to love about a Dallas ticket. OKC is a team that I think they're going to luck out, and the Lakers are not going to. I think the Lakers are going to miss the playoffs entirely. I don't think they're going to be that 8 seed. I think the Lakers for the Thunder are the worst matchup potentially in the first round. I think there's a decent chance they draw a Kings or a Suns and they're able to make it through the first round. But I think in the long run, the Thunder have a lot of flaws. And everyone kind of talks about, it's the inexperience. You hear about the rebounding. I actually think those two aren't as big factors. I think one small factor is Shea getting to the line. Now, we talked about, Matt, about he's playing just as well now that the fouls have gone down. So maybe there's not a ton there. The biggest thing to me is I don't see this team shooting this well in the postseason. Lou Dort is not going to shoot 41% from three in the postseason. Jalen Williams isn't going to shoot 45% from three in the postseason. Chet isn't going to shoot 39%. They have a lot of Isaiah Joe isn't going to shoot 41%. The team as a whole is shooting 39.4%. And I know that's in part because they're able to space teams out. Their offense is based entirely around getting good looks. I've watched enough playoff basketball to know that there are guys that even with open looks, the playoffs, things tighten up a little bit, and those shots do not go down at the rate that they do in the regular season. And the Thunder, as much as I love them, and as much as I think in the long term they have an incredibly high ceiling, those are the type of guys that I see seeing 3-point percentages that fall off immensely. And based on how big that is to their offense, it is a team I'm looking to fade. So that's a long way to say this path, if Denver does keep the foot on the gas and move into that 1 seed, and Dallas is able to hop in that 6 seed, avoid having to play any playing games, I love the potential math for the Mavericks to get back to Western Conference Finals. Then, hopefully we've all been loading up our Denver futures throughout the season on those free bets like Joe told us to. Then you're in a really good spot either way. So I do think that the key word is path, and I think it has opened up potentially very nicely for the Mavericks.
My only thing on the Thunder I will say is that there is this part of me that sticks in my head about no one is a buyer on OKC. No one. Like none of us. It's either like, well, I mean, yeah, we know the Thunder aren't going to do it. They're too inexperienced. Or, well, hey, look, the Thunder are going to run into, like, they just do not have the size. They're going to get out rebounded, and that's going to kill them. Or in Jim's case, like, they're not going to shoot this well in the playoffs. And I just can't be like, yeah, but like, what if they do? like, what if they just like are really good at basketball? Like, what if this team, and I can't do it in such a way that makes me convinced to bet them.
Well, here's I think a good counter is, we saw Caleb Martin have an almost Eastern Conference Finals, performance. If you have enough of those guys, you can slot in the hot ones and bring out the cold ones. I think it's a dangerous game, but you are right. There is definitely a world in which it can happen. But to an overarching point, they are third favorites by the odds in the West. So no one here is talking about it, but I think there is enough that, like, if they were like 18 or 20 to 1, like the Mavs are, yeah, I would be in on the Thunder. But at 700-800 to 1, it's a lot less appealing, I think.
Joe, the Pelicans are almost definitely going to be in the 4-5, and they're going to face a Clippers team that they match up with pretty well. And yet they are 30 to 1 at BetMGM, and the Dallas Mavericks are 14 to 1 to win the Western Conference. That discrepancy to me is significant because when we do this is one of the benefits of doing a betting show is we don't just have to be like path and 3-point percentage and matchup. We also get to be like, okay, but the number is completely fucking bonkers. From the opposite perspective of what Jim was talking about, let's say that because the OKC Thunder now are a half game up on the Nuggets, they're one up in the loss column with tiebreaker. Now after the Nuggets loss on Sunday, if the Thunder get the 1 and the Pelicans get they are going to get the I'm not 100% pretty confident it's going to be Pelicans Clippers first round, 4-5. You now have a 30 to 1 on the Pelicans if you were to bet it now, and that's how it shakes out, where the Pelicans have to beat the Clippers, who have been pretty spiraling, and who they match up well with, and then the Thunder, who, if we want to talk about that rebounding edge, good God, the Pelicans would just beast them. Would be a very challenging series, and they've got wing defenders to guard the perimeter guys. What are your thoughts on Pelicans versus Mavericks and the value there?
Yeah, so it's funny that the number is the same because on February 25th, when we did this, I said I thought the Pelicans might be a buy low, and they were 30 to 1, and they're still 30 to 1. And I think the thing that's like odd about that is, to me, it's become like more, maybe it's in part because like it's become more certain that they're going to be in the 5-6, whereas Denver, it looks like it's much more certain that they're going to be either 1 or 2, as opposed to, it looked like at that point, Denver was pretty like solidly in the 3 instead. So, maybe that's part of why the line is kind of staying the same. But I do think that path matters so much in the Western Conference, where it's kind of hard to differentiate a bit between the two of them. But I will say I'm a little surprised with the Dallas number being, where they are. I think they're the 4th shortest odds in the Western or 4th or 5th shortest odds in the Western Conference. And they, along with the Suns, are like not certain to even make the playoffs based on where they are in the seeding. So I'm curious to know, I think that the Dallas number could probably get shorter if they do kind of solidify that 6th seed. But I do wonder, kind of looking at these two teams, if, the New Orleans seems to be pretty slotted into the 5-6 or 4-5 rather. And the number, I can't imagine it moving too much by the time the playoffs start. Whereas Dallas, like, I wonder if we wait and they do end up being the 6th seed and they do get a matchup against Minnesota, does the number really change too much from where it's at? Or does it really kind of continue to sit there? Because I still think that, like kind of Jim said, it's still a flyer to me to take Dallas when you have a team like Denver at the top of the conference that has been tremendous. And like, I do wonder if like today's or yesterday's win was a little fluky for what Dallas was able to do, just based on the rebounding numbers. They took like almost 20 more shots than Denver. And like, that's very rare for that to happen. So even though Denver outscored them from 3, Dallas took like 20 more shots than Denver. So I think it kind of like evened out there a bit, just in terms of where we think the extremes are for both of these teams and that type of matchup. But I do think that the number on New Orleans is long still, given the certainty that they probably are going to be in the first round matchup that they, I think, have a personnel edge against, where the Clippers kind of do want it. Like, their pivot is, let's go play small. It doesn't work when you play the Pelicans. It's a problem because Zion now, he's been playing a lot more motivated, it seems. And when he's running the point, which they've been letting him do a little bit more, they've been incredible because he's just a freight train running at you on the fast break. So I think that the number on New Orleans is one that I would rather have, despite the level of uncertainty that Denver might be a second round matchup, just because I do like the certainty of their first round matchup and a matchup against the Clippers.
Well, and the other thing that might be a point in favor of grabbing that Pelicans number now, almost all these, I am like, let's wait on path. And to a degree, you do want to wait to see if Denver does take that 1 seed. But the Clippers are suddenly, like Matt, you used the word spiraling. I think that's a good word. They're also just picking up nicks and knacks, and now it's Norman Powell's a little bit hurt. Zubac has been dealing with stuff. Paul George, Kawhi left a game recently. If they have Harden, even they literally their entire starting lineup has picked up stuff in the last couple of weeks. If they have one of those that turns into a real injury, suddenly that is something, because it's so locked in on that 4-5 matchup, that will move the Pelicans number. So that's the only thing that, if you think that any of these are real whatsoever, or that, we'll come on here, it'll be perfect post hoc. We can either say, the Clippers were just using, little nagging injuries to get right for the postseason, save their players and be well rested, or they'll turn out to have dinged up, and we'll say, oh, you know what? They went into the postseason a little bit hurt, and then that was what cost them. They timed their health poorly. So it's really hard to know sometimes, especially with teams and players as cagey as the Clippers and Kawhi. But I do think that's one point in favor. I'm almost always, the last couple of months have been path. Let's wait. Let's see the number once we see the bracket. But the Pelicans are one where I could see potentially that number shrinking if there's an injury on the Clippers.
For me, I think it's more about, again, this kind of goes back to what we talked about 2 weeks ago, which is the idea of, all right, do you want to take, if I do these finals matchups exactas, and it's like Celtics versus if the Nuggets don't make it, and then Nuggets versus who would come out if the Celtics don't make it. It's a question of, do you want the mechanical parlay of going each round, or do you the futures play? And I will say that I think with Dallas, I am very much I think I want the series by series. Like, I want to bet them series by series versus the Pelicans. If I can get a lay that is Thunder 1, Nuggets 2, Clippers 4, Pelicans 5, I'm in.
Yeah.
I'm in. I'll take, like, then it's like, all right, this is like the path for the Pelicans to make a Western Conference Finals appearance with a 30-1. And they will be massive favorites or massive underdogs versus the Nuggets. But you can deal with that when you get there and find creative ways to bet it. Like, put yourself in the position. Let's jump over to the other side real quick. And I want to talk about, we'll save Western Conference play-in for another time. I want to talk about the Knicks, though. And they get OG Anunoby back, and they've been obviously so good with him. They're starting to get a little bit healthier. Jalen Brunson once again proved in that Kings game. That Kings game I thought was a really great game for a number of reasons, but among them is just like, here's a playoff type environment. Which teams can win this type of game? And the Knicks once again proved that they are kind of made for this. That to me is like the really big difference here is the Knicks aren't just like, oh yeah, like they're a pretty good team with like some guys, like Julius Randle's having a great year. Like, the Knicks are built in such a way with an identity that's going to make them a very, very, very tough out. Joe, like, what is the minimum level of health that you need to believe the Knicks can make a run, and how far do you think that run can go?
I think a lot of it is going to depend on the path, obviously. Like, the biggest thing is, like, can you avoid Boston in the second round? That, I think that's like generally like the biggest question. And I think it's going to be real tight for New York right now, because they are 2 games back of the Cavs in the loss column, and they are 3 games ahead of Indiana in the loss column, and they're the 6th seed. And like, you don't want to really drop just because everybody's tied with 30 losses. I think that from a health perspective, I do think that you need Julius Randle back. I think that he is critically important for the offense, and also just that, like, he's got a level of toughness and like tenacity that I think has mattered. Brunson, as good as he is, I think in particular matchups, you do need a guy like Randle that can really kind of take it into the inside. And then the reason I say that too is the trades that they made with the Detroit Pistons to get Bogdanovich and to get Burks have not really looked so good. Both players are like massive negatives so far this season for the Knicks. And when you look at their on-off, they're both some of the worst on the team. Burks is minus 16.3. Bogdanovich is minus 19.1. I think that if you get Julius Randle back, those minutes kind of shrink for both of those guys. And maybe even those matchups that they have to play against are like a little bit more bench minutes. So I do think that is really, really important. I think Mitchell Robinson is super valuable for the team in a given playoff setting. But I do think that, when we look at what the potential matchups could be, I think that again, Orlando, they have that double big, if that's kind of the way it shakes out right now. But even to have two like really elite bigs, defensively, especially in Robinson and Hartenstein, I think it's important just in case somebody gets into foul trouble is like really what's most important about that combination. But they are like, I don't want to call them redundant to each other because they do slightly different things. I think Robinson is a better like true defender and rim deterrent kind of player, whereas Hartenstein I think can affect the offense a little bit better. But I do think that for New York to really have a lot of success, it's going to come down to like not only how healthy they are, but like can they get some minutes together with that type of lineup, see what's important, and see who is going to be in that playoff rotation. I mean, at the end of the day, like I think that they do match up good, or well, good, whatever the grammar is, but they do match up well against Boston, and they do match up well against Boston just because of all the looks that they can throw at them, especially defensively. You have so much length between Hart, Anunoby, Hartenstein, Mitchell Robinson, that I think that would really matter. But obviously, like if you're going to run into Boston in the second round, it becomes like hard for me to say like, yeah, New York is going to do better than that. Like when right now, the way the bracket would shake out, that's who you're playing in the second round.
Jim, if they do not have Boston in their bracket before conference finals, do you want a future on the Knicks or do you want to still bet them round by round?
Well, are you ready for this? So I was queuing this up over here. I was going to propose it as like a segment of like, tell me if this is an absolutely terrible zag, but I have two semi zags for you. And the first is that I kind of like the Knicks to be in that 4 or 5 spot and get Boston in the second round instead of Milwaukee. Milwaukee's playing really well. Now you would have the Tibbs versus Doc. I think we'd probably all lean towards the Tibbs side of that from a playoff coaching perspective, but I think they have more answers for Tatum plus depth than Giannis plus Dame. Now, Brunson-wise, I think Brunson does far, far better against Milwaukee than Boston. Boston would really give him a lot of trouble with that backcourt versus Milwaukee, who's kind of been a sieve. So I think that would be the argument against. But if they're back to full health, I do think Randall, is a very key component of either of those series. And I know Joe and I have both, I'm sure, yelled at Julius Randle many times over the years, but I do think he is a very integral part of this. So I don't hate them being in the 4 or 5. And if we do get to the start of the postseason and we get to see everything and I don't have to tie up my money for even longer, I'm pretty sure I'm going to be on this Knicks team futures wise. And my second hot take I want to run by you, if in that Celtics Knicks series, who's the best player on the court? Could it be Jalen Brunson?
Woo!
Oh, I love this. I love it.
I think because of the matchup, I would still say Tatum would have more impact on the series because of Derek White and Drew Holiday for the Celtics. But I think it's a question, and I think it's at least worth thinking about Milwaukee looking good and Knicks having fewer answers for the Bucks roster as is than the Celtics potentially.
I will just tell you this. So I think where I still kind of come down on it is Boston is better equipped to throw the schemes to deter Brunson than Milwaukee is. And the other problem is that, to be quite honest with you, I like, let's go through maybe Brunson's the best player in that series. I think Jaylen Brown is like number 3 with like a very large dot. And like Brown is having a fantastic season. And Jalen might just like be like, that might be the difference. It's not, is Brunson better than Tatum? It's like, no, Brunson's got to be better than Tatum and Brown together.
Yeah.
And like the other problem here is just like, look, I've loved Julius since he was a prospect. I love the guy. Like I love watching him. Julius's playoff history is not good. Like it's just not, not good. And so like from that perspective, but I will say that, like, I am still on the same kind of idea of look, if I can get them in a Bucks series, I think they win. Like, I think they beat the Milwaukee Bucks. But we'll see what happens. All right, let's go do it for Buckets. My thanks to Jim Turvey, Joe Dellera, the Future Jays, for joining me. Tomorrow night, Buckets live at 11 Eastern. I'll join you from right here in my parents' basement. Thanks for joining us. Appreciate you guys being with us. My thanks to David Payne, our producer, as well as Hutton Jackson, the video crew, getting us over at youtube.com/The Action Network. Hope you guys have a great week. We'll see you guys again next time. Till then, let's get buckets.